Hi, I'm Ava, and I'm turning 34 this year. After finishing college, I landed a job at a well-known company. They paid me well, especially for a newcomer, but the job required a lot of travel and extra hours. Despite the challenges, I enjoyed feeling like I was doing something important. When I was 28, I got promoted to head an entire department, which was a big deal, especially since it's rare for women to advance that quickly. About 4 years ago, I married my boyfriend, Alex. We had been together for 2 years after meeting through a friend. I wasn't looking for a relationship, but my friend thought it was a good idea to introduce us. I never saw myself getting married or having kids, but Alex was eager to settle down and start a family before we got too old. I wasn't ready for that at all. I had just gotten promoted, and the idea of getting married and having kids felt too rushed. So, whenever Alex brought it up, I told him we needed more time to know each other better, and that marriage meant thinking about more than just the two of us. Alex then suggested, "Okay, let's wait 2 years before getting married. By then, we'll really know each other, right?" At first, I didn't think we'd last that long, but surprisingly, we did end up dating for 2 years before tying the knot. Throughout our relationship, Alex was loyal, didn't have any gambling habits, and always treated me kindly and sincerely. I admired his strong work ethic and how he always put effort into everything he did. But there was one thing that bothered me a bit: his big ego. Whenever someone at work, especially a senior, pointed out his mistakes, he'd come home ranting about how he didn't need to be told what to do and that he always thought his way was the best. Listening to him, it was obvious that he was being criticized for his errors, but it seemed like he couldn't handle being corrected, whether it came from a superior or not. When we decided to have a dinner with both our families to celebrate, Alex chose a really expensive restaurant that cost over $200 per person. He then asked me to split the bill with him because it was so pricey. I suggested going somewhere cheaper, but Alex insisted, saying it was important to make a good impression. I felt frustrated because it seemed like Alex was worried people would think he was cheap if we went somewhere less fancy. I thought to myself, if he's that worried, he should pay for it all himself. But Alex explained that his salary couldn't cover the whole bill for 8 people, maybe just 3 at most. So he asked me to cover the remaining 5, meaning I had to pay more than half. It didn't seem fair to me, especially since we were both bringing 4 people from each of our families, totaling 8. Alex wanted us to go to an expensive restaurant, but he couldn't even cover his own family's part of the bill. I wasn't happy when Alex suggested the expensive dinner plan, and I was even more confused when he announced to everyone at the dinner that he would pay for everything. Although I had doubts, everyone seemed pleased, so I decided to go along with it and let him take charge. But looking back, I think I made a mistake. I regret not reconsidering my marriage to Alex, who was so full of himself. After we got married, his behavior towards me changed completely. He started talking down to me all the time. Before we tied the knot, he promised to help with household chores since I was busy with work. But once we were married, he said things like, "What would people think if they see a man doing laundry? That's a woman's job. I work hard outside, so I deserve to relax at home." He never lifted a finger to help, no matter how busy I was. His attitude annoyed me, but I could handle doing the housework. What really bothered me was that Alex was sending all his money to his parents, even though they were farmers and struggling to make ends meet. Within 6 months of getting married, he stopped contributing any money to our household expenses and gave everything to his parents. I once told Alex it wasn't fair for me to cover all our living expenses with my salary alone, but he argued back, saying, "How can you say that when my family needs help? They're your family too. Plus, you make more money than me, so you should be fine." He didn't listen to my concerns. When he talked to his parents on the phone, he'd reassure them, saying, "Don't worry, I'm taking care of everything with my salary. I won't let Ava interfere." But the truth was, He was giving them all his money. He had nothing left for himself and started asking me for pocket money, saying, "Can you give me about $200? I can't even afford lunch." I reached a breaking point and suggested, "Let's set a monthly limit on how much we send to your parents. You need to figure out how to cover your own expenses." Alex would agree, but he kept sending all his salary to his parents. That was something I couldn't tolerate anymore. One day I had to go on a business trip for about 2 weeks. Alex asked, "What about my food and laundry for 2 weeks?" Even though he knew my job required frequent travel. Feeling annoyed at his immaturity, I told him, "Figure it out yourself. You're an adult. If you can't handle it, why don't you go stay with your parents while I'm away? You'll be fine there, right?" Alex reluctantly agreed. When I returned home 2 weeks later, I found Alex's sister, Megan, there. She lived a bit far from us, and we hadn't seen each other since our wedding. I wondered why she was there, and Megan, seeing my expression, said, "Hi, Ava, it's been a while. Oh, right, about the money. It was a big help. Thank you so much." She smiled brightly, saying things that didn't make sense to me. Without even unpacking, I asked, "Megan, what money? What are you talking about?" She replied without hesitation, "Huh? Alex said that since you had some savings, he'd give me money for my business startup. He assured me not to worry because you had at least $1 million. I was completely baffled. Just then, Alex walked in holding my bank passbook and seal. When he saw my expression, he said, "Oh, welcome back. Perfect timing. I'm going to give your savings to Megan. You know she's a nail artist, right? She's been wanting to open her own shop. She's been saving up, but she's still short about $1 million. I remember that you've had savings since before we were married, exactly $1 million. So I told her she could have it." With a smile, he handed the passbook and seal to Megan, saying, "You're lucky. This will help make your dream come true. Show some gratitude, okay?" I couldn't hold back any more. I snapped, "What are you talking about? That's my money. Why are you deciding this on your own? I could understand if you said you'd lend it. We'd need a legal agreement and a plan to pay it back, right? You can't just give away someone else's savings without any discussion." I grabbed the passbook and seal back from Megan. Alex looked at me and said, "What? We're family, aren't we? It's silly to make legal agreements with family members. Plus, we're not lending it, we're giving it. You never spend any of your money because you're always working. It's a waste to just hoard it. Megan has a dream. It's more meaningful to use it to help her." Then he gave me a stern look. Upon hearing Alex's words, I realized that he was impossible to reason with. I felt like continuing the conversation was pointless. Then Alex dropped a bombshell. "This money is too good for you, so I'm giving it to Megan. You'd only waste it. You can just work and save up again. If you still want to argue, we get divorced." Seeing this as an opportunity, an idea struck me. Without hesitation, I replied, "Fine, let's get a divorce. I'll prepare the papers and send them to you. I'll come collect my things soon. Until the divorce is final, I'll stay at a hotel. Goodbye for now." With that, I grabbed my luggage from the business trip and swiftly left the house. Alex was shocked by my sudden decision. Soon after, he bombarded me with texts, begging me to come back and even saying that Megan would forgive me if I gave her the money. I ignored all his messages. Who does he think he is? The next day, I went to the city hall and sent the signed divorce papers back home. Despite this, Alex kept texting me asking if I was really sure about the divorce. I simply replied, "Please submit them as soon as possible," and ignored the rest of his messages. Surprisingly, the divorce was finalized quicker than I had anticipated. A week after it was official, I waited until Alex was at work and then moved my belongings to my new house. In his texts about the divorce papers, Alex had been rude, calling me names and saying we were now strangers. So I decided not to take most of the furniture and appliances from our old home. Instead, I deposited half of the small savings we had accumulated during our marriage into his bank account and left it there. That night, I received numerous calls from both Alex and Megan. At first, I ignored them, knowing what they were about. But eventually, I answered, and Alex immediately started shouting, demanding to know why there was only $800 in the account. I calmly replied, I split the property as we agreed. We originally had $1,600 in our joint account, right? So I left you with half of it, which is $800. And since all the furniture and appliances were bought after we got married, I left them behind. That's fair, isn't it? Just to clarify, I ended up with less than Alex, but he wasn't convinced. He insisted, You're supposed to have $1 million in savings, right? So half of that, $500,000, should be mine. Plus, you got an inheritance from your grandfather. Right. Half of that should be mine too. I was stunned and couldn't help but laugh. I had seen this coming. Otherwise, Alex wouldn't have agreed to the divorce so easily. Trying to hold back my laughter, I explained, Alex, the division of property only applies to assets acquired during the marriage. My savings from before we were married and the inheritance I received aren't part of that. I consulted a lawyer, and I divided our marital assets fairly. And remember, all the money we saved during our marriage was actually earned by me. You never contributed to our expenses, so be thankful I divided that, I told him. Alex accused me of lying, saying, That can't be true. You're trying to trick me. Give me what's rightfully mine, or I'll sue you. He yelled desperately, but I remained calm and replied, If you want to sue me, go ahead. I've been fair and I haven't deceived you. I'm not afraid of being sued. Hearing this, Alex panicked and said, Wait, let's forget the divorce. I was wrong. Please come back to me. He completely changed his tune and begged for reconciliation. I responded firmly, The divorce is finalised, and I have no intention of reconsidering. This is serious. Then I informed him, If you plan on staying in our old place, you'll have to cover the rent yourself. It's about $1,800 per month, which you probably didn't realise, because you've never paid it. Alex weakly admitted, I can't afford that. If he couldn't pay, it was his problem. After that, it seems Alex moved back in with his parents because he couldn't afford the rent. Unable to cover the moving costs, Alex sold the furniture and appliances I left behind. His parents thought Alex was making good money and welcomed him back, thinking it would make their lives easier. But without my income, Alex couldn't support them as much as before and is struggling to adjust to living there. Megan's plans for her business were affected since she couldn't access any of my savings. She had to stop her preparations, causing her a lot of frustration. Alex also faced difficulties from Megan, but that's not my concern anymore. I'm concentrating on my work and enjoying living independently. I've had my fill of marriage. Alex still sends messages expressing his desire to reconcile, but I ignore them completely. It's almost amusing to hear him update me on his situation from time to time, so I've let it slide. However, I'm planning to block him soon.